Under a bright full moon, the military camp of the Arkwright family sits quiet before the dawn of battle. Inside one of the tents, a lone figure prepares for the coming slaughter by the light of a single candle. Zeno meticulously polishes his blade, considering the steel to be the ultimate proof of his devotion. His entire existence is sworn to one man, Lord Atlas. To him, this single blade isn't just a weapon. It's the very definition of his life. The young knight stares into the sword, his expression cold and unreadable. A voice from outside breaks his concentration, calling his name. A heavy boot steps into the tent, signaling the arrival of his master. Zeno immediately bows his head in respect. Lord Atlas Arkwright stands before him, his presence as imposing as his silver armor and long white hair. The Lord delivers his orders. Zeno will lead the vanguard and break through the center of the enemy lines at dawn. His specific mission is to bring back the head of the enemy commander, Garzas, for the glory of the family. Atlas looks down at his most loyal tool and warns him not to fail. Zeno looks up, his red eyes filled with absolute resolve. He remembers a snowy day years ago when Atlas found him abandoned and took him in. Back then, he was just a dying child with nowhere left to go. Atlas gave him a reason to live when he had nothing else. Because of that debt, Zeno considers his life to belong entirely to his lord. He takes a deep breath, steeling himself for the coming mission. "Your will be done," he replies, accepting his fate without question. Atlas turns and leaves the tent without another word. Left alone, Zeno draws his blade, the metal catching the faint light. At daybreak, the battlefield becomes a chaotic red blur as Zeno tears through the opposition. He moves like a ghost, his sword leaving a trail of blood with every swing. No one can match his speed or his lethal precision. Enemy soldiers fall before him like wheat to a scythe. A cavalry unit charges, desperate to stop the lone monster. Zeno doesn't even blink as the horses approach. Facing down an entire army, he stands his ground alone. An enemy commander rushes in, certain he can take the knight down. But Zeno isn't fighting for himself. He's fighting for the Arkwright name. He has spent his whole life pushing his body past its limits, even if it meant coughing up blood. He prepares to shave away a piece of his very soul to end this fight in a single point. Launching himself forward, he prepares his ultimate technique, the sword of loyalty. He whispers the name of the forbidden art, absolute shadow. The world around him seems to distort as his energy surges. In a flash faster than the eye can follow, he passes through the charging horses. A split second later, the cavalry is decimated in a violent eruption of blood. Watching from a distance, his own comrades recoil in fear, calling his technique a monster's sword. The strain of the move is too much, and Zeno vomits a thick spray of blood. He collapses to his knees, gasping for air while his fellow soldiers tell him to stay away, calling him filth. Despite the victory, Zeno is at his absolute breaking point, his body finally failing him. Just as he thinks the battle is over, a massive second wave of enemy cavalry appears on the horizon. Zeno's breath hitches as he realizes the sheer number of fresh troops heading his way. He knows he's in a bad spot. His body is already screaming from the previous fight. He calculates that he only has enough strength left to unleash his absolute shadow technique one more time. Exhausted and covered in sweat, he glances toward the high ground where his comrades should be. Instead of backup, he sees Lord Atlas watching the slaughter from atop a cliff, his cape billowing in the wind. Atlas observes the scene with a cold, detached expression, showing no intention of helping. A look of grim realization crosses Zeno's face as he waits for his lord's signal. He sinks back into a battle stance, determined to fulfill his mission regardless of the cost. Even if it means dying right here, he will finish the job he was given. Atlas watches Zeno struggle, but he isn't waiting for a victory. "I'll do this for Lord Atlas," Zeno tells himself, pushing his mana to the absolute limit. The Lord's red eyes narrow as he watches Zeno's power flare up. He notes that the wretched golden light is finally starting to leak from his servant's body. Deciding that the tool has become too dangerous to keep, Atlas commands his hidden mages to take action. "Do it," he orders, signaling the start of a pre-planned betrayal. Dark, shadowy mages suddenly emerge from the surroundings, focusing their power on Zeno. A massive magical shockwave erupts, trapping the knight in an instant. Zeno gasps as shadowy chains from the black binding formation coil around him, paralyzing his movements. Immobilized and confused, he looks up at the mages, his mind racing for an explanation. The shadowy magic begins to drain his remaining energy, leaving him completely helpless. In that moment of vulnerability, an axe-wielding figure steps forward and strikes. The enemy commander, Garzas, looks down at the bound knight with a cruel grin. Garzas mocks him, saying it's a shame that his own people are the ones who set him up. The commander raises his heavy axe, calling Zeno a monster while the other soldiers watch. The blade of the axe bites deep into Zeno's shoulder, sending him to the ground in a spray of blood. Laughing, Garza reveals that this whole setup was arranged with Zeno's own master. Zeno stares in disbelief, unable to process the idea that Lord Atlas would betray him. He hears the steady clink of armored boots approaching him from the dark. His eyes widen as the figure finally comes into view. Lord Atlas descends from the cliff, looking down at his bleeding subordinate. Atlas stands over him, calling his name in a voice devoid of any warmth. The dying knight looks up at the man he once considered a father, desperate for any shred of hope. Coldly, Atlas informs him that his role has finally reached its end. Zeno can barely speak, his mouth filled with blood as he asks why this is happening. He reaches out a blood-stained hand, still trying to cling to the bond he thought they shared. Atlas's expression turns into a glare, telling Zeno not to misunderstand their relationship. He admits that he never considered Zeno his son, not for a single moment. Zeno's reflection in a pool of his own blood shows a broken man who has lost everything. Atlas looks back at the day they first met in the snow, but his memory isn't one of kindness. He recalls looking into the child's dead eyes and deciding that he would be useful. The Lord's final words to him are a cold assessment. He was simply a fine tool to be used and discarded. Atlas stands over Zeno's broken body, cold and calculating, as he reflects on how easily he manipulated the boy's loyalty. Zeno's gloved hand lies limp on the ground, still clutching the hilt of his sword in a pool of fresh blood. Atlas looks down with icy red eyes, admitting that Zeno had grown far too powerful for a mere tool. He remembers how Zeno's spiritual energy was abnormally high, even when he was just a small child. To prevent that power from becoming a threat, Zeno was given potions designed to suppress his mana from a young age. Young Zeno took every dose without hesitation, believing it was for his own health and for the sake of his master. But it seems they reached the limit of what medicine could suppress. Zeno's true strength was finally overflowing. The brilliant aura he displayed on the battlefield was the ultimate proof that the medicine could no longer hold him back. Atlas explains that he had to strike now before the loyal dog inevitably turned his fangs on his masters. Desperate and dying, Zeno crawls through the blood, pleading that he would never betray the man he served. "I would never," he shouts, his voice cracking with the pain of both his wounds and the betrayal. A sudden, sharp sound of metal hitting flesh echoes as a final blow is struck against the bound knight. Atlas tells him to be silent, deciding to reveal the true meaning of the name Zeno within the Arkwright house. Zeno's head slumps back into the blood-stained earth as his vision begins to dim. With a cruel gaze, Atlas tells him that his name simply means disposable sword. In the background, the soldiers and the enemy commander Garza's erupt into mocking laughter at Zeno's expense. The knight's legs give out as he collapses entirely, the spark of life fading from his eyes. Blood trickles from his mouth as he lies motionless, his service to a heartless master finally at an end. In his final thoughts, he laments how he devoted his entire life and his sword to a man who only saw him as an object. He stares up at Atlas's indifferent face, realizing that his absolute loyalty was a tragic mistake. A final spear strike lands with a heavy thud, ensuring that the legendary warrior will never rise again. Garza and his men watch on as the cold efficiency with which Atlas discarded his own greatest asset leaves the battlefield silent. Zeno's red-rimmed eyes begin to close as the world dissolves into a sea of darkness and blood. He lets out a final pained gasp, the golden light of his soul flickering out. His last breath hitches in his throat before he falls completely silent on the battlefield. The body of the strongest sword saint lies discarded in the dirt, a victim of the very family he fought to protect. Garza lets out a booming laugh, relieved that the monster who nearly killed him is finally dead. The commander raises his massive axe, intending to finish off the corpse and the legacy of the knight. Zeno's spirit cries out in the darkness, asking if his only purpose in life was to be used and thrown away. As the axe falls, he is struck by the cruelty of being treated like a disposable tool despite all his sacrifices. What have I been doing all this time? He wonders, his consciousness drifting into the void. What was it all for? He screams into the silence as his past life finally vanishes. But instead of nothingness, he feels a strange and comforting warmth surrounding him. Luminous notes float through his mind, and he wonders if he has somehow crossed over into the afterlife. He opens his eyes to see a banner with the crest of the Elminster family, the most powerful mages on the continent. A soft, warm hand touches his face as a gentle voice tells him that he is finally awake. A beautiful woman with golden hair and kind eyes, Lady Celestia, smiles down at him and calls him her precious baby. Zeno's mind is filled with shock as he realizes he is looking through the eyes of an infant. He stares in disbelief at his own reflection, Unable to process the fact that he has been reborn, he flails his tiny baby hands, his mind racing as he tries to make sense of this impossible situation. Now reborn as Lucius Elminster, the former warrior is held by his new mother, left wondering what has happened to him. A narrative scroll appears, explaining that the empire is split between two great powers, the Arkrights and the Elminsters. The narrative continues, describing the Elminster family as a house that reveres magic above all else, standing as the direct counterpart to the sword-wielding Arkrights. Legends say the founder of the Elminsters was a being of incredible power, whose very presence reshaped the world. It is claimed that they created an entire continent with just a single incantation. Such was the depth of their arcane knowledge. They were said to possess mana that rivaled the brightness and energy of the sun itself, a legacy that Lucius has now inherited. As Lucius rests in Lady Celestia's arms, he reflects on the irony of his situation. A man who lived and died by the sword has been reborn into a family of supreme mages. He realizes that he has been given a second chance in the very house that represents the polar opposite of everything he once knew. While his infant body appears to sleep peacefully, Lucius's mind is sharp, sensing the incredible dormant power within his new form. Suddenly, his golden eyes snap open, filled with a look of intense determination that is far too mature for a baby. He focuses on the internal sensation of his energy, feeling a familiar yet vastly different core than the one he had in his previous life. He is overwhelmed by the feeling of endlessly overflowing mana, a contrast to the suppressed and limited power he struggled with as Zeno. This time, no one will be able to steal or suppress his true power. It is an immense, unbridled force that belongs to him alone. A dark, knowing smirk touches the infant's face as he concludes that the heavens have not abandoned him after all. Lucius realizes he has been born into the perfect environment with the ultimate bloodline, giving him everything he needs to rise again. With boundless mana and a new identity, he vows to use every resource at his disposal to rewrite his fate. The core of his new purpose is absolute and unwavering. He will exact his revenge on Atlas Arkwright, the man who betrayed his loyalty. To achieve that vengeance, he knows he must first seize absolute control over the power of the Elminster family. His intense inner monologue is interrupted by the reality of his current life, as a line of overeager servants approaches him. A chef and a crowd of maids look on with adoration as they present a tray containing what looks like glowing, golden honey. The chef beams, proudly announcing that they have prepared a special food specifically for the young Lord Lucius. He explains that the meal is made with nectar harvested directly from the world tree, a legendary and incredibly rare ingredient. Lucius looks completely bewildered as the chef tries to coax him into taking a bite of the glowing, high-mana substance. The maid, Fran, jumps in to show him a sparkling, ornate rattle, claiming that all the maids spent the entire night infusing it with mana just for him. The scene turns chaotic as the servants scramble to catch the precious rattle after Fran accidentally tosses it into the air in her excitement. Lucius sits on the floor, sweating and wide-eyed, completely overwhelmed by the absurd amount of attention and luxury he is receiving in his new life. Little Lucius has the eyes of a shark, but his new family is too busy being obsessed with him to notice. Lady Celestia Elminster, his new mom, tries to get the staff to back off because they're basically suffocating the poor kid. She smiles down at him, asking for his opinion like he's actually going to answer her. He just gives her a blank stare. He's not exactly your typical gurgling infant. As she strokes his hair, his internal monologue is stone cold. He's telling himself not to get attached. He's still got the mindset of Zeno, the guy who learned the hard way that being precious to someone usually comes with a price tag. He's convinced all this affection is just a down payment on his future magical power. He flashes back to the blood and the betrayal of his past life. He knows better than to trust anyone now. Suddenly, Fran the maid starts screaming with joy because Lucius finally rolled over on his own. While they celebrate the big achievement, Lucius is already thinking about how to exploit this wealthy lifestyle for his revenge. It's been a week since he was reincarnated into the Elminster family, the literal rivals of his murderers. He spent that time soaking in the opulence and realizing just how high-tier this house really is. The magical training here is insane. They start them early and they don't hold back on the resources. The maids are literally cooking up mana-infused milk in giant pots. This isn't baby food, it's a power-up. Even his bedtime stories are just magic theory lectures disguised as lullabies. Lady Celestia sings complex incantations while rocking him, weaving power directly into his subconscious. He still finds the whole acting like a baby thing pretty awkward, especially with an audience. He pushes the bottle away, his mind shifting from feeding time to combat testing. He decides it's time to see if his old skills still work in this tiny body. He reaches for absolute shadow, his secret technique from his days as a sword saint. It's all about extreme condensation. Back then, he used it to sharpen his blade. Now, he's trying to do the same thing with raw mana. He pulls every bit of energy he can find into a single point, trying to keep it under control. But there's way more power in this kid than he realized. It starts leaking out like a broken dam. A massive explosion of blue light rips through the room and shoots straight up through the roof. A giant pillar of mana pierces the night sky, lighting up the entire castle like a beacon. Down in the kitchens, the shockwave nearly knocks the staff flat. They've never felt anything like it. Celestia and Fran immediately drop everything and sprint toward the nursery. Outside, the sky is still glowing. Every person in the city just saw the Elminster estate erupt. Back in the crib, Lucius is wide-eyed, realizing he just set off a magical nuke. He's shocked by his own strength. The mana in this body is on a completely different level. He desperately tries to suck all that energy back in before he gets caught red-handed. He manages to calm the storm just as the bedroom doors are slammed open. Celestia charges in, screaming his name and looking for whatever just exploded. She stops and looks around, but the room is suspiciously quiet. Lucius is lying there, putting on his best "I was just napping" face. Fran thinks they might have just imagined the whole thing. Celestia finally relaxes, watching her innocent son sleep and wondering what he's dreaming about. For a brief moment, things go back to normal in the sunny estate. But the peace is shattered when Fran bursts in again, looking like she's seen a ghost. She's panting, trying to tell the madam that they have a serious problem with the royal family. Celestia tries to get her to breathe and explain what the emergency is. Fran gasps out that a group of Imperial mana appraisers has just breached the gates with the royal guard. Lucius watches from his mother's arms, his sharp gaze returning. The Empire is already looking for the source of that blast. Celestia is rightfully suspicious. Why would Imperial officials show up at a remote borderland without a heads-up, especially while her husband is away? Lucius knows exactly why. That massive mana spike from the night before was like a flare in the dark, and now he's got a real mess on his hands. The Great Hall is filled with tension as the entire household staff gathers to face the unexpected visitors. Celestia sits tall on the sofa, keeping her son close while she waits for the guests to state their business. The doors swing open, and a group of figures in dark, intimidating robes marches into the room. Celestia stands to meet them, her expression calm but her guard completely up. The lead appraiser stops just a few feet away, his movements slow and deliberate. Celestia tightens her grip on Lucius. She can feel the hostile energy radiating off these men. The appraiser leader addresses her as the daughter of Duke Elminster, dropping all formalities immediately. He's not here for small talk. He makes it clear that they've arrived under the authority of an imperial decree. He gets straight to the point. Their mana observation network caught a massive anomaly last night. It wasn't just a ripple. It was a torrent of energy so powerful it only happens once in a millennium. He points a claw-like finger toward the family, his voice cold and accusatory. He's certain the source of that world-shaking power is right here, inside the Elminster estate. The staff looks on in disbelief, whispering about where such a monster could possibly be hiding. The appraiser leader warns them that if their test finds a threat, they won't be showing any mercy. According to imperial law, any anomaly deemed dangerous will be dealt with through immediate execution. The staff is terrified, realizing that a single mistake during this appraisal could mean the end of the entire household. For the officials, this isn't personal. It's just a grim duty they have to perform for the Empire. He reaches into his robes and pulls out a glowing crystal orb. This is a sacred treasure designed specifically to sniff out mana sources, and it's already starting to hum. He scans the room, confirming that the source of the anomaly is definitely standing in this hall right now. He steps forward, the crystal in his hand vibrating with a strange, high-pitched ring. As he gets closer to Celestia, the light from the orb starts to intensify, bathing the room in a golden glow. He stops right in front of her and tells her she needs to step forward for the official test. Celestia doesn't flinch, even as she feels the pressure of the crystal's power. She realizes this might get dangerous, so she hands Lucius off to a maid to keep him out of the line of fire. She tells the girl to look after her son while she deals with the appraisers. She steps toward the lead official, ready to prove that she's got nothing to hide. The appraiser leader brings the crystal close to her, expecting it to react to her mana. But something's wrong. The orb isn't reacting to her at all, much to his confusion. He narrows his eyes, wondering how the signal could be so strong yet not come from the Duchess herself. Suddenly, the crystal starts rattling so hard it looks like it's going to shake itself apart. It's not just humming anymore. It's screaming, reacting to a power source that's way beyond its limit. A blinding flash of light erupts from the orb, filling every corner of the massive hall. The energy is so intense that the staff has to shield their eyes as a pillar of light shoots toward the ceiling. The light isn't coming from Celestia. It's focused entirely on the baby being held by the maid. The lead appraiser is frozen in shock as the sacred treasure in his hand starts to crack under the pressure. He stares at the infant, sweating as he realizes he's looking at a level of power that shouldn't even exist. Before he can say another word, the crystal starts to give way. It shatters into a million pieces, exploding from the sheer spiritual weight of the child. Lucius just watches the chaos unfold with a sharp, unbothered gaze. The secret's out. The appraiser leader can't believe his eyes. His voice is trembling as a horrifying realization sinks in. He's looking at a newborn baby, but his senses are screaming that he's found the source of the anomaly. This baby, he stammers, unable to reconcile the infant's appearance with the power he just felt. Lucius stares back with a cold, piercing gaze that has no business being in the eyes of a child. Before the officials can make another move, a hand grips the hilt of a sword as tension reaches a boiling point. "Please wait," a voice calls out, cutting through the silence of the great hall. A sudden burst of white feathers and light erupts from Celestia as she manifests her protective mana. She stands her ground, declaring that she won't allow anyone to lay a finger on her child. The appraiser leader is stunned. He asks if she's really prepared to defy the laws of the entire empire. Celestia doesn't blink. To her, a single tear from her son is worth more than all the laws of men. She makes it clear that this is what it truly means to be a mother. Lucius watches her from the maid's arms, his golden eyes fixed on her shimmering, angelic form. The appraiser leader looks at her with a mix of fear and respect, asking if she's truly ready for the consequences. The air in the room swirls with magical energy, as her wings glow with an intense, holy light. Celestia faces him head-on, her expression full of resolve as she protects her family. The official can see that she's not backing down. This isn't just a duchess, it's a mother protecting her cub. The other appraisers look on, confused and waiting for a command that seems like it might never come. A subordinate challenges the appraiser leader, asking if he really plans to ignore what they just saw. The leader looks down, his mind heavy with the weight of the law he's sworn to uphold. He knows the Empire's mandate is to nip the bud of calamity before it can ever blossom. But looking at the family, he wonders if a sprout raised with such love can ever truly be evil. He questions whether this child will really grow into the disaster they fear. "I've decided I want to see for myself," he announces, shocking his men. He stares deep into Lucius's eyes, as if searching for a sign of the soul within. He addresses Celestia formally, acknowledging her status as the daughter of the Duke. He points out that she's essentially ready to go to war with the Empire, just for her son's sake. He closes his eyes and makes a surprising choice. "Then, I shall join you." Celestia is left speechless, sweat trickling down her face as she tries to process his words. He warns her that if the child ever strays from the path of good, the responsibility is on her. He's putting his own head on the block with her. "The two of us will bear the blame. Is that understood?" He delivers a final, chilling command as he exits the room. "Do not forget." The massive doors slam shut behind the appraisers, leaving the room in a heavy silence. As soon as they're gone, the terrifying tension leaves Celestia's body all at once. She looks like she's about to collapse, her eyes glassing over with tears of pure relief. She rushes toward the maid holding Lucius, her steps frantic and desperate. "Lucius," she cries out, her voice breaking as she reaches for her son. She takes his face in her hands, checking every inch of him to make sure he's still okay. She's sobbing now, thanking whatever gods are listening that her baby is safe from harm. She falls to her knees, clutching Lucius to her chest as Fran rushes over to support her. The sheer terror of the last few minutes finally washes away in a wave of motherly relief. Outside, the appraiser leader looks back at the estate, his mind still reeling. "Impossible," he whispers. He still can't wrap his head around how an infant could shatter a sacred treasure with nothing but spiritual pressure alone. Lucius stares back with an intensity that seems to pierce through the physical world. The appraiser leader decides to take a drastic step. "In that case, I will connect my soul directly." He initiates a soul bond ritual to bypass the physical medium and see his true nature. As their souls touch, a violent backlash of energy jolts through the leader. Gah! He is immediately struck by the sheer scale of what he finds. What? Deep within the child's spirit, a presence looms that defies all measurement. This soul is. The official is blinded by the radiance of the infant's spiritual pressure. The amount of spiritual energy is so massive that I can't grasp the core of his soul. It's like staring directly into the sun. His eyes go wide as he glimpses a terrifying truth hidden within that light. A dark, pulsing core of energy sits at the center of the brilliance. That is, he reels back, his mind struggling to process the magnitude of the anomaly. Celestia watches him with growing dread. Appraiser, what did you see? She and Fran wait in tense silence, sensing the gravity of the moment. The official composes himself, his voice dropping to a low, ominous tone. The duty of the appraisers under the direct control of the Empire is, he speaks of an ancient mandate, a book written at the dawn of the Empire to prevent a specific prophecy. That book tells of the Empire's greatest calamity, he explains, the words hanging heavy in the air. The text describes a horrifying being, the one who harbors a curse of the abyss within a sacred soul. The prophecy foretells ruin. They will eventually bring forth a great calamity and sink the Empire into darkness. He looks at the family and delivers the verdict. The state of your son's soul that I just witnessed was exactly as the prophecy described. Celestia's voice is barely a whisper as she reels from the accusation. That can't be. The leader knows his orders. The curse residing in that soul is the spark that will eventually bring disaster to the Empire. By the authority of the imperial family. He makes a cold declaration of intent. Before it can sprout, I will nip it in the bud right here and now. The family stands frozen in shock, while Lucius stares back with a sharp, defiant gaze that confirms everything the appraiser fears. Celestia is overcome with relief, holding her baby close as she weeps. Baby Lucius just stares back, his golden eyes filled with an unnerving, intelligent gaze. The Imperial Mana appraiser leader is visibly shaken by the raw power he just witnessed in the child. He orders his subordinates to report this monster-level talent to the king immediately. 12 years flash by in an instant. Lucius is now a boy, standing calm while lethal mana beams fill the training room. He doesn't just dodge the attacks, he flows between them with absolute precision. He pushes for even more speed, demanding the training system go harder. Most people would snap under this much pressure, but he's thriving in the chaos. To him, flirting with death is the only way to truly grow his power. He balances on a tiny floating platform, one slip-up away from disaster. He focuses his spiritual energy, refining it into something that transcends human limits. The session finally ends, and the floating platform begins to drift back down. Lucius is completely drenched in sweat, gasping for air after the intense workout. Celestia and the maid, Fran, have been watching the dangerous spectacle from the sidelines. His mother is worried sick, begging him to stop these life-threatening training sessions. Lucius stands up, looking far more composed than any 12-year-old should. He calmly tells her he's perfectly fine, and she shouldn't worry. After doing this every single day for over a decade, it's just business as usual for him. Neither his mom nor Fran can believe how casually he treats his own life. He leaps down from the platform, using a burst of mana to cushion his fall. He lands gracefully right in front of them with barely a sound. He offers them a small, confident smile to ease the tension. Fran isn't having it though, and she starts screaming at him for being a reckless brat. She goes on a rant about how even she almost died 3 times back when she was training. Lucius just lets the lecture wash over him, his mind already on the next step of his plan. Once she's finally done venting, Fran hands him an official-looking letter. This is the moment he's been preparing for since the day he was reborn. He takes the envelope, noticing the heavy imperial wax seal on the back. He tears it open and scans the formal document inside. A cold grin spreads across his face as he realizes the time has come. It's an official invitation to the Royal Academy selection ceremony. The Academy is where the Empire's greatest talents gather to fight for glory. The top graduate is granted a blessing that provides power beyond any human comprehension. That divine strength is exactly how Lord Atlas Arkwright became so untouchable. Atlas used that same blessing to slaughter everyone who stood in his way, including his most loyal soldier. Lucius still remembers the face of the man who betrayed him in his past life. He clenches the invitation so hard, the paper starts to crumple in his grip. To get his revenge, he first has to conquer the school and claim that blessing for himself. He looks toward the massive spires of the Royal Academy towering in the distance. The selection arena is a massive coliseum, already packed with thousands of spectators. Lucius steps onto the field with the other applicants, ready to show them he's on a whole other level. In the stands, the noble families watch with bated breath, eager to see the next generation of talent. Lucius remains stoic, his golden eyes scanning the arena for any hidden traps. A heavy silence falls over the stadium as the official start time approaches. The headmaster rises to his feet, his presence commanding the attention of thousands. With a flash of magical energy, he signals for the selection ceremony to begin. The applicants are led onto the field, where a massive blue crystal lizard awaits its first prey. Lucius blends into the crowd, observing the beast's movements and measuring its power. He knows the next few minutes will determine his entire future in this new world. The announcer's voice booms across the Colosseum, explaining the lethal stakes of the test. Every student must protect the floating sage's eggs while trying to subdue the rampaging beast. Lucius watches the eggs bobbing in the air, calculating the most efficient way to shield them. The crystal lizard lets out a bone-chilling roar, ready to tear through anyone who steps forward. High above, the instructors watch with calculating eyes, looking for any sign of weakness. The legendary judgment scale descends from the clouds, glowing with divine light. One plate of the scale will measure a student's defensive capabilities and how well they guard the eggs. The other side will weigh their raw offensive power and their ability to suppress the monster. Weights will be added based on their performance, deciding who makes the cut. The first group is dismissed to the waiting area, while the arena is prepared for individual trials. Lucius walks through the halls, his calm demeanor drawing unwanted attention from the other applicants. Whispers of the cursed child of Elminster follow him, with some even wishing he had died years ago. Hector Gilbert lounges in a nearby chair, his crimson eyes filled with arrogance as he waits for his turn. Lucius ignores the venomous looks, his mind solely focused on taking the top spot. The first challenger is called to the stage, the fire-wielding prodigy, Lilia Magnaro. She doesn't hold back for a second, unleashing a torrent of flames and ordering the beast to burn to ashes. A massive explosion rocks the arena as Lilia pours every ounce of her mana into the attack. When the smoke clears, the results are displayed. An A rank for subjugation, but a poor D rank for protection. The judgment scale tips in her favor just enough for a passing grade, though she's clearly not satisfied. Lilia scoffs and steps aside, frustrated that she couldn't achieve a perfect score. Next, a mage in a dark cloak attempts to use shadows to restrain the rampaging lizard. He manages a decent A rank in protection, but his offensive power falls short at a C rank. One applicant after another fails to master both sides of the scale, leaving the crowd underwhelmed. A student tries to use magical vines to bind the creature, but they're shredded in seconds. Another girl fires a concentrated beam of energy, barely managing to keep the lizard at bay. She scrapes by with a pass, but it's clear she won't be among the top tier of students. Then the announcer calls for Hector Gilbert, and the energy in the stadium shifts instantly. People lean forward, whispering about the new generation prodigy, who's supposed to be the best swordsman in the Empire. Lucius watches with interest, nodding that the Gilbert family didn't even exist back in his original life. Hector stares down the crystal lizard with a cold, condescending smirk, completely unfazed by its size. He mocks the mages for their troublesome tricks, claiming that true strength lies in a single blade. He grips the hilt of his family's sword, and a surge of crackling energy envelops the weapon. His red eyes narrow, focusing on a single point as he prepares to unleash his strike. In a flash of blinding speed, he executes a strike so powerful it leaves the entire arena in shock. A blinding flash of energy cleaves through the air, marking the end of the current trial. Hector Gilbert stands motionless, his blade already sheathed as the dust begins to settle. The arena's magical sensors react instantly to the sheer force of his performance. From high above, the sheer scale of the destruction is visible, with the beast completely suppressed. The judgment scale glows brilliantly, awarding Hector an S rank in subjugation and an A rank in protection. A smug smile plays on Hector's lips. He's currently in first place and he knows it. The crowd erupts in whispers, awestruck by the speed and precision of the silver-haired prodigy. But the tension only rises as the announcer calls out the name of the very last applicant, Lucius Elminster. The atmosphere shifts from admiration to mockery as the cursed child steps onto the field. High in the VIP box, the examiners discuss the upcoming performance with low expectations, convinced the show is already over. Hector Gilbert watches from the sidelines, his cold gaze fixed on the boy he considers his only potential rival. As Lucius takes his position, the crystal lizard lets out a guttural roar, sensing a new opponent. Celestia and Fran lean forward in the stands, their hearts racing with a mixture of fear and hope for the young boy. Lilia Magnaro watches with crossed arms, her eyes narrow as she waits to see if the rumors about the Elminster family are true. Without warning, the lizard unleashes a devastating wide-range energy blast that engulfs the entire arena floor. The headmaster looks on in concern, questioning how any student could possibly survive such an overwhelming area of effect attack. The appraiser leader explains that normally, a student would need to deploy a massive defensive barrier just to keep the sage's eggs intact. But Lucius stands right in the center of the storm, seemingly defenseless as the purple energy closes in. His golden eyes are calm, devoid of any fear as he prepares to show them what true sword mastery looks like. The monster pauses, confused as its lethal energy seems to dissipate before it even touches the target. The spectators gasp, unable to comprehend the phenomenon unfolding before their eyes. Lucius moves with fluid grace, batting away the stray energy beams with nothing more than his bare hands and raw mana. He flips through the air, his movements so precise that he protects every single egg without wasting a single drop of energy. The headmaster stands up in shock, realizing that Lucius isn't using any known spells or incantations. The appraiser leader is equally stunned, noting that the boy is manipulating pure spiritual energy with impossible precision. To the observers, it looks as though Lucius is catching every single raindrop in a thunderstorm, one by one. Lucius focuses his mind, his senses expanding to encompass the entire battlefield. With a gentle touch, he redirects a bolt of energy, turning the monster's own power against it. Frustrated, the crystal lizard prepares to fire another blast, but Lucius is already closing the distance. He drops from the sky like a falling star, a concentrated orb of light forming at the tip of his finger. With a single word, he commands the beast to stop, the sheer weight of his presence pinning it to the floor. A small, controlled burst of energy ripples out from his hand, silencing the arena in an instant. The massive beast is completely neutralized, and Lucius begins to walk away before the dust even clears. A profound silence hangs over the stadium as everyone struggles to process what they just witnessed. Suddenly, the judgment scale begins to move, dropping a massive weight that shakes the foundations of the arena. The noble families in the stands are left speechless, their previous mockery replaced by pure, unadulterated shock. More weights begin to pile up on the scale, one after another, as the censors struggle to calculate the score. The magical device begins to crack under the strain of Lucius's overwhelming performance. "No way!" someone shouts from the crowd, voicing the disbelief shared by every single spectator. Lilia's face contorts in a mixture of rage and confusion, unable to accept that a cursed child could possess such power. Lucius stands with his back to the crowd, his posture perfect as he waits for the final verdict. The scale shatters the established ranking system entirely, flashing a triple S rank that has never been seen before. The magical scale solidifies its judgment, displaying a staggering S+ grade for both defense and suppression. The announcer's voice rings out across the stadium, officially nomming Lucius Elminster as this year's top entrant. The crowd of young nobles erupts into a mixture of cheers and stunned conversation, having witnessed a miracle. Fran breaks into tears of pure joy, while Lady Celestia hides her face in her hands, her heart overflowing with relief and pride. Not everyone is celebrating. Hector Gilbert's gloved hand trembles as he grips the balcony railing in a fit of silent fury. His face contorts with a primal rage, his red eyes burning with hatred as he struggles to accept his defeat at the hands of a cursed child. Meanwhile, Lucius remains remarkably composed, his expression cold and focused as he absorbs the reality of his new position. The Academy's head official stands before the assembled applicants, ready to present the formal awards for their performance. Lucius takes his place among the elite group of students, standing out despite his small stature. The old official's gaze is stern, but filled with newfound curiosity as he looks down at the boy who shattered every record. He presents a shimmering green crest, a symbol of honor and achievement within the prestigious institution. Lucius stares at the badge for a moment, the golden light reflecting in his intelligent eyes. With the crest pinned firmly to his chest, he officially accepts his place at the Academy. He takes a deep breath, closing his eyes as he prepares for the challenges that he knows are yet to come. The official concludes the ceremony, wishing the new students luck in their upcoming academic journey. The sun shines brightly over the majestic towers of the Academy, marking the beginning of a new chapter in Lucius's life. An announcer directs the incoming students toward their respective dormitories and orientation hall. As the students ascend the grand staircase, the shadows of future rivals and allies begin to cross paths. Back at the entrance, Fran finds herself unable to stop weeping as the reality of Lucius's departure sets in. She emotionally tells him how the entire staff back home is rooting for him, her voice cracking with every word. Lady Celestia stands beside her, watching her son with a gentle, bittersweet smile as he prepares to leave her side. She reaches out, cradling his face in her hands as if to memorize every detail before he steps into this new world. She rests her forehead against his, sharing a quiet, intimate moment of motherly love and protection. "Please never forget that there are so many people praying for your safety," she whispers, her final blessing following him into the Academy. Lucius smiles at his mother, Celestia, reassuring her before he leaves. He tells Fran to look after his mother, finally heading out for the Royal Academy. He walks with a steady stride, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. Being admitted at the top of the class is just the first step toward his goal of graduating as valedictorian. He arrives at the academy, greeted by a massive, shining estate. This palace-like building is the dormitory, reserved specifically for the top student. Meanwhile, Lilia Magnaro is fuming in her shared room, which she considers little more than a stable. Her roommate tries to stay calm over a game of chess, warning Lilia not to accidentally start a fire. Lilia flicks a piece off the board, determined to eventually steal that top spot for herself. The first day of classes begins in a grand lecture hall filled with new students. Lucius sits quietly while the others whisper about the cursed kid and the tricks he must have used to get first place. Hector Gilbert listens to the gossip, his expression darkening with every word. Hector dismisses Lucius's performance as nothing but cheap parlor tricks. A rhythmic clicking of boots echoes through the hall as someone approaches. Lucius remains unbothered, though he can feel the heavy atmosphere building behind him. A hooded figure watches from the high windows, silhouetted against the bright light. The man stands perched on the very edge of the roof, looking down at the class. He drops down, vanishing into a blur of motion. He appears in the center of the hall, catching Lilia and the others off guard. Hector is already tensing up, his hand hovering near his blade. The instructor, Valerius, tells Hector to drop that useless fighting spirit. Hector looks up, his gaze sharp and defiant. He declares that he doesn't take orders from anyone, regardless of who they are. Hector laughs off the dramatic entrance, unimpressed by what he thinks is a bluff. The other students joined in, mocking Hector for showing a lack of dignity toward a certified official. Valerius remains silent, his face hidden deep within his hood. He lets out a soft breath, his patience clearly reaching its limit. He gives Hector one final warning, as a cold energy begins to swirl around his hand. With a single sharp command, he tells them to drop it. An immense weight of mana slams into the floor, catching the entire room in its grip. Hector is crushed under the pressure, his face contorted in a mix of shock and pain. Lilia gasps, her body trembling from the overwhelming aura of a true monster. Lucius is the only one who stays perfectly still, noting how easily the instructor handles this level of power. Hector can barely keep his eyes open, his pride shattering along with his composure. Valerius towers over him, letting the pressure sink in. He steps forward, the sound of his heels clicking against the stone floor like a death knell. He starts his lecture, making it clear that their lives at this academy have officially begun. He walks through the aisle, stating that their lineage and noble status are irrelevant here. Lilia can only stare down at the desk, paralyzed by fear. Valerius slams his hand down, declaring that their family names mean absolutely nothing. He reveals a glimpse of his face, his eyes sharp and unforgiving. He tells the class the only rule that matters: ability is everything. Valerius stares down at the class with a cold, piercing gaze. Lucius remains calm, meeting the instructor's intense eyes without flinching. A thin smirk plays on Valerius's lips as he prepares to begin. He asks the class if they're ready to start their first lesson. He formally introduces himself to the new students as Valerius. He states that he'll be their instructor for basic magic theory at the academy. Lucius realizes he's seen this man before. He flashes back to the day Valerius arrived at his home to appraise his mana capacity as an infant. Lucius is impressed that a direct subordinate of the Empire is teaching here, as his mana pressure is immense. Valerius explains that first, they must learn the fundamental rules of the institution. He gestures with a clawed hand, activating a massive holographic display. The names of every student appear in the air, revealing the academy's strict hierarchy. He explains that these rankings are determined by their performance in every single mission and class. Hector Gilbert looks frustrated as his name appears at rank 51. The system updates in real time, showing how quickly they can fall. To graduate at the top, they must maintain a spot in the top 16. The winner of the tournament becomes the valedictorian and receives a prestigious blessing. Lucius clenches his fist, his focus entirely on that top prize. One student complains about the 4-year grind, and his rank immediately starts to slip. The boy watches in horror as his number drops toward the bottom of the list. He panics as he hits rank 421 in a matter of seconds. Valerius warns them that whining is also factored into their ability scores. He reveals the lethal catch: the bottom 25 students are expelled once a year. The system displays the ranks of those who are currently set to be removed from the academy. Hector realizes that the school uses this method to balance the number of enrollments every year. Valerius asks if the severity of their situation has finally sunk in. Without another word, he prepares to start the first practical lesson. A massive swirl of dark energy erupts from his hand, swirling around the class. The students are shocked as they realize He's using advanced teleportation magic. Suddenly, the entire group is standing on the edge of a massive, foggy canyon. Lucius takes in the sight of a long, stone bridge stretching out across the abyss. The students look around, still dazed by the sudden shift in location. Valerius formally welcomes them to the first real trial of their academic life. He tells them the assignment is actually quite simple. The task is to cross the bridge within the next month. The students laugh, thinking the requirement is a piece of cake. Two boys immediately volunteer to go first, confident they can finish in minutes. Hector watches them from the back, deciding to wait for a moment. The boys start sprinting onto the stone structure with full speed. One of them leaps forward, his boots hitting the bridge with a loud thud. He flares his mana, creating a bright green protective aura around his body. But his energy starts to flicker and drain away the moment it makes contact with the bridge. Hector warns the others that they'll end up exactly like their falling classmate if they aren't careful. The other students watch in shock as the boy plummets into the dark abyss below. Lilia and the other students wonder what kind of horrors lie at the bottom of the canyon. Lucius stares at the stone path, realizing it's a curse that forcibly drains a person's mana. He notes that the enchantment covers the entire length of the bridge. Valerius repeats that power is the foundation of everything in his class. A student nervously asks instructor Valerius for a bit more information. The boy wonders what the historical success rate for this specific class usually is. Valerius casually replies that in a typical year, the success rate is roughly 20%. The students start whispering among themselves, terrified by the low odds. Valerius suddenly stops and admits that he actually misspoke. He corrects himself with a chilling smile as the wind howls around them. A dark shadow falls over the group as his next words hang in the air. He clarifies that the survival rate is only 20%, leaving everyone frozen in fear. Panicked voices erupt as the students realize the true danger of the trial. Some wonder if it's even possible to increase their mana capacity enough in just 1 month. Lucius narrows his eyes, sensing that there's more to this test than meets the eye. He watches as the green mana of another student is instantly absorbed by the ground. Lucius concludes that even with a massive mana pool, crossing the entire bridge this way is impossible. He realizes that the focus on building mana capacity is actually nothing but a clever distraction. With a confident smirk, Lucius declares to himself that he's already figured out how to clear the class. The instructor drops the bombshell, an 80% failure rate. At this academy, failing usually means you're dead. The students are paralyzed. It's one thing to hear about a tough trial, it's another to realize you're basically a coin flip away from the abyss. A guy takes a tumble, disappearing into the dark. That's not a simulation, that's a permanent exit from the census. Suddenly, graduating doesn't seem worth it. People are panicking, ready to bolt before they're next. The line for withdrawals starts immediately. Better to be a live coward than a dead prodigy. Instructor Valerius doesn't even blink. To him, if your resolve breaks this easily, you are just taking up space anyway. The ones who stay are the real monsters. Lilia Magnaro looks like she's ready to fight the bridge itself. The rules are set. They've got 1 month to prepare. Survive the bridge or don't come back. The countdown begins. 30 days to find a miracle or make one. It's a mad scramble. Everyone starts training like their lives depend on it, because they actually do. Lucius just watches. While everyone else is running in circles, he's busy reading the fine print of the trial. 20 days to go. The initial adrenaline is gone, replaced by pure, grinding exhaustion. The students are looking like ghosts. They're pushing their bodies to the breaking point, but the bridge is still waiting. Lilia is on a warpath. She's screaming through the pain, trying to force her mana to grow through sheer spite. Frayed nerves and short tempers. One wrong look and these kids are ready to kill each other before the trial even starts. Lilia's worried. She knows her current aura capacity isn't enough to withstand the drain. She needs more, lots more. Others are trying to build physical endurance, lugging boulders through the mud under the pouring rain. It's too much. Another student collapses, his body finally giving up under the impossible weight. Lilia doesn't care about safe training. She picks up a rock 10 times her size, betting her life on raw power. She's pushing her limits to the absolute edge. In her mind, there's no middle ground, only victory or death. Hector Gilbert is playing a different game. He's not here to lift rocks, he's here to solve the puzzle. He heads out to a quiet spot, away from the screaming and the sweat, to test his own methods. He's cold, calculating, and looking for the most efficient way to cross without breaking a sweat. He tosses a rock onto the bridge stones to see how the curse reacts. The moment it touches the ground, the magic activates. It doesn't just sit there, it hunts. Purple miasma boils up instantly, draining the aura from the rock in seconds. It's a literal mana vampire. Hector's eyes narrow. He's seen enough to know that a slow walk is a death sentence. He ignites his own aura. If the bridge drains you over time, he'll just have to make sure he's not on it for long. He takes off like a shot, a silver streak against the landscape, moving faster than most mages can even think. The air cracks as he moves. Pure speed is his answer to the bridge's hunger. He looks satisfied. If he can outpace the curse, the drain won't have enough time to actually kill him. 3 days left. While the others are at their limit, Lucius is still just sitting on a hill, meditating. He finally has the answer. Passing this isn't about how much aura you can carry, it's about how you use it. He doesn't need a massive pool of energy. He just needs absolute surgical control over the tiny bit he has. It takes him back to his previous life. As the Sword Saint, he wasn't known for his mana, he was known for his mastery. He was a shadow on the battlefield, ending fights before the enemy even realized they'd been cut. He spent decades refining his aura control down to the cellular level. It was like trying to thread a needle during a hurricane. His training was a nightmare. He had to be perfect because any mistake meant a quick death. He created the Absolute Shadow, a style that could shatter high-level spells with just a flick of energy. But pushing his human body that far came with a price. He spent his final years coughing up blood from the strain. He literally lived on the edge of death, sacrificing his health to reach a realm of control no one else could touch. Now he's going to take those legendary techniques and adapt them to magic. The Academy thinks they've set a trap, but Lucius is about to break the whole game. The local gossip mill is already running. The other students are convinced Lucius has just been slacking off for the entire month. They're labeling him a spoiled brat who bought his way into the Academy. Meanwhile, the mysterious Noah Raven is just taking it all in. Noah keeps a close eye on Lucius, who hasn't moved from that rock. To anyone else, it looks like he's just given up. The clock is ticking, only 2 days left. Lilia Magnaro is spending every second pulverizing trees to build up her raw power. With 1 day to go, Hector Gilbert is refining his speed, cutting through the air until he's nothing but a silver blur. He's got that look of someone who's already decided he's the main character of this exam. The month is up. The remaining students gather at the bridge, and of course, Lucius is already there, just sitting on the dirt. Lilia is fuming. She can't wrap her head around why the top-ranked student would just sit on his hands for 30 days straight. Lucius remains unfazed as the crowd gathers. He's the calmest person there, while everyone else is vibrating with nerves. 3 seconds on the clock. Lucius finally opens his eyes, perfectly timed with the deadline. 1 second. He cracks a smirk like he's about to reveal a winning hand nobody saw coming. Time's up. The instructor makes a grand entrance, descending from the sky draped in a massive wave of purple mana. He hits the ground with a thud. The preparation phase is officially over, and now it's time for the body count. The Bridge of Trials looks even more ominous in the gray light. It's a long way down if you mess up. The instructor stares them down with a terrifying grin. He's clearly looking forward to seeing who survives the next 10 minutes. The question hangs in the air. Who's got enough guts to step onto that bridge first? Lucius keeps his head down, staying silent while the pressure in the air reaches its peak. The other students are already losing their nerve, trying to push each other forward so they don't have to be the first guinea pig. Someone finally makes a move. A red boot hits the gravel with enough force to shut everyone up. Lilia steps up, ready to take the lead. She's had enough of the waiting game, but Hector isn't about to let her take the spotlight. He claims he was the one who volunteered first. The two of them start bickering right at the edge of the abyss. It's like they've forgotten there's a lethal curse waiting for them. Lilia actually suggests settling their life-or-death priority with a game of rock, paper, scissors. Because why not? Lucius just watches the circus. He's probably wondering how these two made it this far with that level of maturity. Lilia wins the game and rubs it in Hector's face. He looks like he'd rather jump off the bridge than lose a children's game. In the background, the other students are trying to psych themselves up, claiming they've worked just as hard for this moment. Lilia gets into position, but the tension is still thick enough to cut with a knife. She realizes the game was a waste of time. Whether she goes first or second, that bridge is still going to try and kill her. As soon as someone steps onto the stone, the bridge reacts. The purple miasma starts rising like a hungry beast. The screaming starts almost immediately. The drain is way more violent than any of them expected. Hector watches from the sidelines, calling the failures idiots. He's not impressed by people who didn't plan ahead. Bodies are already dropping. It turns out that survival rate wasn't an exaggeration. One student is desperately trying to push through, but his mana is being sucked out faster than he can replenish it. The instructor watches the carnage with total indifference. To him, these kids are already dead. He knows the secret. This isn't a test of how much energy you have. It's a test of how well you can keep it. Most mages just let their mana sit there, making it an easy target for the bridge's drain. The only way across is to refine your spiritual energy so fast that the bridge can't get a grip on it. It's about mastering the absolute basics of refinement, not just having a big tank. And most of these kids failed that day one. The fear is contagious now. Nobody has actually made it across yet, and the pile of withdrawals is growing. Panic is setting in. If you slip up on this bridge, there's no safety net. It's just a long drop into the void. Lilia has seen enough. She shoves her way through the panicked crowd, done with the hesitation. She stands at the entrance of the bridge, fire in her eyes. It's time to see if all that tree-punching actually paid off. Lilia takes a deep breath, mentally preparing for the hell she's about to walk into. She doesn't just step forward. She ignites, her mana erupting into a column of fire that pushes back the gray mist. Her eyes glow with a fierce, golden light. She's not here to play, she's here to survive by sheer force of will. The instructor watches with a clinical eye, nodding the massive reservoir of spiritual energy she's burning through. As her boots touch the bridge, the curse reacts instantly, lashing out with tendrils of purple miasma. The drain is immediate and violent. Lilia's posture breaks as the bridge starts to feed on her life force. The instructor knows the math. The bridge is designed to empty a mage in seconds. Most people would have collapsed already, but Lilia is built differently. She slams her foot down, her flames roaring even brighter as she fights for every inch. Even the instructor looks slightly taken aback. This isn't just talent, it's raw, unadulterated stubbornness. She's panting, sweat soaking her clothes, but her gaze remains locked on the other side. Don't underestimate me. With a final, desperate yell, she forces her mana to peak, turning herself into a human torch. Every step is a battle against an invisible weight, trying to crush her into the stone. The instructor realizes she's overcharging her own body, churning out energy faster than the bridge can suck it dry. It's an incredibly taxing method, but she's actually doing it. She's crossing the bridge through pure, burning spite. The moment her feet hit the grass on the other side, the fire dies out and she hits the ground hard. She's completely spent, her chest heaving as she tries to remember how to breathe. Even while lying in the dirt, she manages a defiant smirk at the instructor. How do you like that? The instructor's expression doesn't change. Passed, he says simply, as if he hadn't just watched a miracle of willpower. Back at the start, Hector Gilbert isn't impressed. He's been watching her struggle with a look of pure boredom. To him, Lilia's approach was clumsy and inefficient, the kind of brute force that leaves you vulnerable in a real fight. Hector has been doing the math while she was screaming. He's noticed something the others missed. There's a tiny, fractional delay between a foot touching the bridge and the curse beginning its drain. He sees the ripple in the purple mana. It's a flaw in the system, and he's exactly the kind of person to exploit it. He grips the hilt of his rapier, a confident, dangerous smile spreading across his face. In that case, he launches himself forward, a crimson aura flaring around him as he breaks the sound barrier. Hector isn't walking. He's a blur of silver and red, moving too fast for the bridge's curse to even get a grip. He skips across the surface like a stone on water, his feet barely touching the cursed masonry. Halfway through, he draws his blade in a lightning-fast arc, just to show off for the crowd behind him. He lands perfectly on the other side, his hair barely out of place. It was a flawless demonstration of speed and precision. The instructor admits it's clever. Crossing before the bridge can react is thinking outside the box, even if it's risky. Hector stands next to him, oozing arrogance. The instructor notes that aiming a slash at him during the dash was a bit much. Hector just shrugs it off, telling the instructor to stop making false accusations with a smug grin. You passed, the instructor confirms. Hector's reply is short and expected. Of course, the students still waiting at the start are speechless. They couldn't even track his movement with their eyes. With the two frontrunners across, the pressure shifts to the rest of the group. Lilia and Hector stand as the gatekeepers of success on the far side, while the rest look on in terror. All eyes suddenly turn to the small blonde boy who hasn't made a move yet. It's the top student. Lucius looks like he's waiting for a bus rather than facing a life-or-death trial. His calm is unsettling. The whispers start immediately. The other kids can't sense any massive mana pool coming from him. They don't see any of Hector's high-speed aura or Lilia's raging fire. He just looks like a kid. The instructor leans in, his interest finally peaked. Well, what are you going to show us, Lucius Elminster? Lucius takes his first step, and the air around his feet crackles with blue electricity. The real show is about to begin. Lucius doesn't scream or sprint. He simply walks, his expression as calm as if he were taking a stroll through a park. The students watching are floored. Noah Raven, observing from the crowd, begins to realize that the rumors about Lucius's top-tier ranking weren't just based on luck or family name. Each step Lucius takes is precise. He isn't fighting the bridge. He's moving in perfect rhythm with something invisible to the others. Lilia watches from the far side, her brow furrowed. From a distance, Lucius looks entirely unremarkable, a small boy against a massive trial. The instructor watches with a skeptical hum. He initially thinks Lucius has just found a standard, efficient way to manage his mana drain. But as Lucius's boots strike the stone, there isn't the usual hiss of the curse reacting. The air remains still. It seems I expected too much, the instructor muses, thinking Lucius has taken a safe, boring route across the bridge. Encouraged by Lucius's easy progress, the student behind him gains a surge of misplaced confidence. Why, yeah, it's all thanks to my training. The instructor's eyes snapped open as he noticed a fundamental shift in the environment. Hey, you can cross normally, the students began shouting in joy. Suddenly, the bridge's terrifying aura vanishes. Other students begin to pour across the stone, laughing and cheering as the trial becomes a cakewalk. Lilia is stunned. She had to burn herself out to get across, and now these average students are practically skipping. They are all surprisingly capable, aren't they? Hector Gilbert sneers at the display. He credits the sudden success to a surge of group psychology, dismissing the others as simple-minded fools. But the instructor knows better. He feels the mana in the air changing, turning from a heavy drain into something sharp and volatile. No. This is. Far from the celebrating crowd, Lucius stands in the shadows, a tiny spark of blue lightning dancing across his fingertips. The instructor's face pales as the horrifying truth dawns on him. At the moment of the transmutation, he whispers, his mind racing. A violent pulse of energy erupts from the center of the bridge. Lucius hadn't just protected himself, he had jammed the entire mechanism. By injecting a perfectly timed pulse of energy into the bridge's foundation, he had short-circuited the ancient spell formula. Blue lightning veins crawl across the stone pillars. Lucius has done the impossible. He has broken a curse that has stood for 1,000 years. A deafening crack echoes through the canyon, sounding like the world itself is splitting apart. Even the arrogant Hector and the fierce Lilia are frozen in shock, their expressions crumbling as they witness a level of power they can't comprehend. The entire bridge erupts in a blinding flash of light, as the curse's spell formula is forcibly released and destroyed. Amidst the chaos and the falling debris of the ancient magic, Lucius remains the eye of the storm, looking down at the power in his palm. As the dust begins to settle, the instructor stands alone on the riverbank, the aftermath of Lucius's solution laid bare before him. He looks at the boy, his voice barely a whisper. What a monster! I never imagined he'd go this far. Lucius has rewritten the rules of the academy. Lucius is looking pretty zen for someone who just turned a trial into a scrap yard. The other kids are spiraling, wondering if the bridge was just a century overdue for maintenance, or if they just cheated death by a hair. They're actually celebrating, thinking they barely survived the impossible. But one guy is looking over his shoulder, not quite ready to join the party. He can't help but think about the kids who didn't make it, the ones who gave it everything and still fell. Everyone turns their gaze back to the instructor standing high above the abyss. The man tells them to chill and snaps his fingers like it's nothing. Suddenly, a purple aura wraps around the falling students, and they start drifting back up to solid ground. The survivors are absolutely stunned. Weren't those kids supposed to be dead? The Imperial Mana Appraiser leader just looks down at them with that sharp, knowing smirk. He drops the real bombshell. Every single person who stayed is passing. The kids are losing it, totally confused about how failing an exam counts as passing. He explains that while they were crossing, he was actually watching their mana refinement. The whole bridge thing was just a big psychological gambit to test their resolve. Even with death staring them down, they stood their ground instead of running, and that's what he was looking for. He tells them that kind of spirit is the ultimate weapon, way more valuable than whatever talent they think they have. The group stands there in silence, letting the lesson sink in. Hector Gilbert just keeps that cold, unreadable expression, not impressed by the motivational speech. The instructor says the choice they made today is basically priceless. Lilia Magnaro looks like she's ready to conquer the world now that she knows she's officially in. He gives them a final congrats on making the cut. A massive light floods the area as the instructor acknowledges the pride he has for every one of them. Lilia's already back to laughing like she owns the place. Lucius remains the odd one out, just watching the celebrations with a detached look. He looks completely bored, like he's already moved on to the next problem. But then the instructor drops a backslash, that kills the mood instantly. He tells them that just because they passed doesn't mean they're all equal, and it's time for the actual evaluations. He starts announcing the ranks from the top, and Lucius Elminster takes rank 45. Lucius doesn't even flinch, just staring back with those golden eyes. The rest of the class is in shock. How did the kid who just took a casual stroll get the highest rating? Hector is standing there fuming, convinced he's definitely the next one on the list. Lilia is trying to play it cool, but you can tell she's expecting a high spot. But the instructor says rank 46 belongs to someone they didn't even notice. Noah Raven steps out from under a dark hood, looking pretty mysterious. Hector is visibly disgusted by the results. The crowd starts buzzing. They can't believe some random hooded guy is ranked above a genius like Hector. Lilia is losing her mind, screaming about how some plain guy could possibly beat her. Noah is just curled up on the ground, looking like he wants to vanish into his own shadow. Lucius watches the meltdown with that same stoic face, probably finding the whole thing amusing. The instructor wraps it up and tells them they better just learn to accept their rankings. Lilia sees her name at rank 57, and she is clearly not taking the barely moved up news well. Hector Gilbert is sitting at rank 47 and tells everyone to just shut up while he processes the blow to his ego. The ranking board shows Lucius at rank 45, and the mysterious Noah Raven right behind him at 46. The rest of the students are buzzing about their new spots, some celebrating survival while others lament dropping down. The Imperial Mana Appraiser leader cuts through the chatter, telling everyone to listen up for how things will work starting tomorrow. He drops the news that academy life is a team sport. Everyone's getting organized into groups of 4. He emphasizes that at this academy, the team is the basic unit for everything they do. Whether it's hitting the books or going on dangerous missions, they'll always be operating as a pack. He makes it clear that the stakes are high. The stronger the team, the more brutal the missions they'll be assigned. But there's a catch. While they work as a team, their individual rankings will still fluctuate based on performance. The instructor's gaze sharpens as he warns them that their own teammates are also their biggest rivals. The students aren't exactly thrilled about the teammates, but rivals dynamic, realizing how rough academy life is going to be. He tells them to rest up because team assignments and their first official mission are coming tomorrow. Then he pauses, dropping a heavy however that makes everyone freeze. He singles out the top 4, Lucius, Noah, Hector, and Lilia, announcing that they'll be forming one team. The 4 of them have very different reactions, but Lilia is the loudest, immediately throwing a fit about being stuck with these people. She's already barking orders, telling them not to hold her back, while the others whisper about the academy putting all the monsters on one squad. The instructor just smirks and tells them to prepare themselves, ignoring the internal drama already brewing. Lucius starts calculating the logistics, realizing that team missions are definitely a double-edged sword. He knows that being the top-ranked group means they're essentially volunteering for the hardest jobs in the school. Even though it's a hassle, he accepts it. If he wants to regain his old strength, he needs the toughest challenges. The instructor then adds a little side note. Their first mission as a team has already been decided. He gets this predatory look on his face when he mentions tomorrow's training session. The newly formed elite squad looks back at him, wondering what kind of hell they've just walked into. He challenges them right then and there. All they have to do is land a single hit on him. The next day, the team gathers in a field. Lilia thinks it sounds easy, but Hector can tell the teacher is totally looking down on them. The instructor stands alone, ready to show them exactly what they're up against. He tells them not to get the wrong idea. This isn't going to be a fair fight. He unleashes a massive explosion of blue mana flames that practically rocks the entire area. As the fire rages, he tells them straight up that no matter their rank, none of them can face him alone. He dares all 4 of them to come at him together, showing no concern for their collective power. Lilia is fuming, Hector is laser-focused, and Noah is just trying to stay out of the blast zone. But Lucius stands his ground, unfazed by the overwhelming aura as the real trial finally begins. Swirling blue energy fills the training field as the trial begins. Lilia Magnaro isn't a fan of the 4-man team idea, especially with this group. Lucius Elminster stands back, his golden eyes locked on their opponent. The target is an appraiser directly affiliated with the Empire, standing calmly in the center. Lucius realizes this guy is at the absolute peak of the Empire's military power. He's the kind of guy who could take down almost anyone in the academy one-on-one. The instructor invites them all to come at him together. Hector Gilbert and the others don't need to be told twice. They charge in. This is the perfect benchmark for Lucius to see how his current power stacks up. He watches as his classmates lead the charge, deciding to wait for the right moment. Hector draws his rapier and prepares a high-speed thrust. He delivers a precise, powerful strike, but his blade stops cold against an invisible barrier, leaving him frustrated. The appraiser smirks, completely unbothered by the effort. Lilia leaps high into the air, her body engulfed in intense fire. She slams her fist down with enough force to crater the ground. Her eyes glow white as she pours more magic into the assault. A massive pillar of fire erupts, but it doesn't seem to make a dent. She keeps the pressure on, but the instructor doesn't even move an inch. From the distance, Noah Raven prepares a spell of their own. A purple magic circle glows brightly on the grass. The hooded student raises their hands to launch a wave of energy. The trio starts hammering the shield with everything they've got. Fire, sword strikes, and magical beams slam into the barrier at once. Hector shouts at the others to stay out of his way as he swings. Lilia snaps back, telling him not to suddenly jump in front of her. They're starting to trip over each other as the coordination falls apart. The two of them begin bickering right in the middle of the fight. It's quickly turning into a shouting match rather than a coordinated attack. Noah Raven just watches them fail to work together. The appraiser looks on, clearly bored by the messy display. He hasn't had to exert any real effort to hold them off. That's when Lucius decides to step up and end this. He gathers a dense concentration of energy into his palm. The others look back in surprise as they feel the massive surge of power. He fires a concentrated golden beam that cuts straight through the barrier. The explosion is massive, catching the instructor dead on. A pillar of light consumes the center of the training grounds. As the dust settles, Hector and the others are left gasping for air. Lucius lands softly, looking as composed as when he started. But a voice rang out from the dust as the instructor casually reminded the kids not to destroy the academy's facilities next time. The instructor walks away, sighing about the mess they've made. The instructor stands in the center of the crater he just created, daring the students to continue. The Imperial Mana appraiser leader shoots them a cocky grin, clearly enjoying himself. Lucius Elminster smirks right back, his eyes burning with interest as he watches the fight. Lilia Magnaro and Hector Gilbert aren't ready to call it quits, both charging back into the fray with everything they have left. Lucius stays back for a moment, watching the exchange with a detached, analytical gaze. Suddenly, the appraiser's movements accelerate into a blur of dark purple energy. A massive shockwave ripples outward, nearly knocking everyone off their feet. Lucius's eyes widen as he witnesses the sheer scale of the instructor's power. The impact sends the trio tumbling across the grass like ragdolls. The instructor closes his eyes for a moment, looking almost disappointed by the lack of resistance. Lucius realizes that the man isn't actually fighting them all at the same time. He's moving so fast it's almost invisible, methodically dismantling each student one by one before they can even react. The appraiser slips past Lilia's reach with effortless grace. He chains his movements from one target to the next, but Lucius notices a tiny flaw in the rhythm. There's a split-second opening in his blind spot that moves randomly every time he transitions. The boy decides he's going to read the timing of their attacks to pinpoint exactly where that opening will appear. Lilia slams her fist into the dirt, refusing to give up. She pulls herself back onto her feet, screaming at the instructor to stop underestimating her. The man just gives her a mocking smirk as she prepares another strike. She and Hector launch a desperate double-pronged attack. They slam their magic and steal against his invisible shield at the exact same moment. Noah Raven remains grounded on a magic circle, providing support from the rear. Despite the pressure, the instructor just dances around them, his afterimages flickering through the air. He doesn't even break a sweat as he avoids their coordinated strikes by inches. Lucius leaps from his vantage point, timing his descent perfectly with the ongoing chaos. Lilia and Hector keep pushing, ignoring the exhaustion that's starting to set in. Lucius knows their current strategy won't work as they continue to hit a wall. Noah Raven slumps to the ground, finally out of mana and energy. Lilia's legs are shaking, her flames flickering out as she reaches her absolute limit. Hector is drenched in sweat, his pride taking a hit along with his stamina. Then a massive surge of blue mana flares up from above. Lucius strikes with a pinpoint attack, sensing that he's finally made a connection. A blinding light erupts at the point of impact, drowning out the entire field. He pours every bit of his energy into this single moment of breakthrough. The other students are forced to shield their eyes from the intense glare. The resulting explosion tears through the training grounds, leaving a massive plume of smoke. Lucius watches intently as the dust begins to settle around the impact zone. When the smoke clears, the instructor is still standing there, encased in a shimmering blue dome. Lilia stares in disbelief, unable to comprehend how he's still standing unscathed. Noah can't believe that even an attack of that magnitude failed to leave a single scratch on the man. The appraiser finally drops his guard, praising them for forcing him to actually use his magic. He turns and walks away without another word, leaving the students to reflect on the massive gap between them. The instructor pauses, his back still turned as he delivers a cold assessment of the students' performance. He declares that they have exactly 1 hour left to clear the exercise, or they will face the consequences. If they fail to clearance the trial in time, their 4-person team will be immediately disbanded. Furthermore, they will be demoted to start in the lower-class teams, a devastating blow to their future careers. The appraiser tells them to reflect on the meaning of being a team as he prepares to ramp up the pressure. He makes it clear that he won't be holding back any longer, challenging them to step up or quit. He advises them to come up with a real strategy, instead of just waiting for an opening that may never come. Lucius Elminster stares at the man's retreating back, his mind already racing through every available variable. Lilia Magnaro erupts in a fit of rage, stomping her feet and cursing the instructor's insufferable arrogance. She is absolutely fuming, her pride stung by the man's dismissive attitude toward their efforts. Lilia spins around, pointing an accusing finger at the quiet blonde boy standing nearby. She demands to know if Lucius has a plan, assuming his calm demeanor means he's seen a weakness. Lucius looks at her with an unreadable expression, his golden eyes sharp and intensely focused. Lilia begrudgingly admits that since he made the man use defensive magic, she'll listen to him this once. She clenches her fist as the weight of their precarious situation finally settles in. She refuses to allow her journey at the academy to end here in such a humiliating fashion. Lucius begins to recount what he observed earlier during the heat of their exchange. Hector and Noah move closer, their initial rivalry forgotten in the face of a shared threat. He explains that he saw a specific distortion in the instructor's spiritual energy when his spell landed. Hector Gilbert listens intently, his crossed arms failing to hide his genuine interest in the analysis. Lucius describes the secret mechanics of the instructor's defensive spell, visualizing the flow of mana. The barrier concentrates spiritual energy at the point of impact to temporarily increase its hardness. Therefore, if they attack several points simultaneously, the barrier's overall strength will drop significantly. Noah Raven is quietly impressed, realizing the depth of Lucius's tactical insight during the chaos. Lilia's hands ignite with fire once more, a fierce and predatory grin spreading across her face. She catches on quickly. The more simultaneous strikes they hit him with, the better their chances. Lucius asks them plainly if they are capable of achieving such precise coordination. Hector scoffs, claiming he's only participating to save himself, not because he wants to help Lucius. Noah Raven steps forward to join the circle, ready to provide the necessary numbers for the assault. The trio stands together, facing the Imperial Mana Appraiser leader with a new sense of purpose. The instructor gives them a final, taunting look, daring them to show him something truly new. "All right then, let's do this," Lilia shouts as she leads the sudden charge. The team launches a perfectly timed, multi-pronged assault from all directions at once. Noah Raven activates a massive magic circle beneath his feet, channeling power to support the frontliners. The instructor watches their approach, still skeptical that numbers alone will be enough to break him. His eyes flare with a sinister red light as he prepares to meet their coordinated attack head-on. Hector Gilbert dives in from above, his sword aimed directly at the center of the shimmering dome. He screams, "Right here," as he delivers a heavy blow to the barrier's surface. He calls out to Lilia, coordinating their strikes to the exact microsecond for maximum effect. Lilia roars her support as she charges, her flames swirling into a concentrated spear of intense heat. Their combined weapons slam into the barrier, sending ripples of shock through the training field. The instructor stands firm at the center of the crater, his hands glowing as he reinforces the shield. Hector's blade slams into the shimmering barrier, causing hairline fractures to spiderweb across the surface. The instructor acknowledges their effort, but remains unimpressed by the magnitude of their strike. Gathering blue mana between his palms, the appraiser prepares to end their final desperate attempt. Another impact resonates through the field as the students refuse to yield to the pressure. Lilia and Hector reach their limits, their bodies trembling under the strain of continuous magic use. Noah's miasma flickers as his strength wanes, the physical toll of the battle becoming undeniable. Hector collapses to one knee, the weight of the instructor's presence nearly crushing his resolve. Despite their exhaustion, they lock their grip on their weapons for one last concentrated effort. Lucius steps forward with a sharp, calculating gaze, refusing to let the trial end in failure. A brilliant burst of light erupts as Lucius channels his remaining energy into a final, unified strike. Lilia and Hector find a second wind, roaring as they pour every ounce of mana into the attack. The collective force of their magic pierces through the center of the appraiser's powerful defensive spell. Lucius's golden eyes glow with intensity as he guides the flow of power toward the weak point. Lilia and Hector watch in awe as the tide of the battle shifts in their favor at the last second. For the first time, a look of genuine surprise crosses the Imperial appraiser's calm face. A massive explosion of mana consumes the area, shattering the barrier with a deafening roar. As the smoke clears, the four students stand panting, their eyes fixed on the man who stood unmoved. Silence falls over the field, while everyone waits to see the result of their final, desperate gambit. Hector, Lilia, and Noah struggle to catch their breath, their energy reserves completely depleted. A single drop of blood trickles down the instructor's cheek, proof that they finally reached him. The instructor smirks, officially declaring that they have passed the daunting entrance examination. Relief washes over Lilia and Hector as they celebrate their hard-won victory against all odds. Noah begins to express his gratitude, his voice trailing off as his vision starts to blur. The dark-cloaked boy collapses onto the grass, his body finally giving out after the intense magical exertion. Hector and Lilia are totally wiped out, gasping for air on the grass. Behind them, Lucius stands perfectly still, looking like he hasn't even broken a sweat. Lilia tries to act tough even though she's exhausted, telling the guys they better be grateful for her help. Hector is just trying to catch his breath. Once the arrogant Hector caught his breath, he immediately mocked Lilia, telling her she was finally worthy of being his subordinate. Lilia wouldn't have it. She snapped back, asking what the hell the arrogant brat just said. Lucius watches the argument from behind, his mind completely focused on that last attack. He knows he tapped into something special back there, a power he hasn't fully explored yet. He remembers the exact moment his golden mana surged. It wasn't just magic. It felt like his energy had fused directly with the intent of a sword. Images of his past life as a sword saint flicker through his mind, bleeding into his current self. If he can master the fusion of magic and swordsmanship, he'll be unstoppable. As the examiner turns to leave, Lucius stays locked in his own thoughts, determined to perfect this form. A subtle, confident smirk crosses his face. He's starting to see the true potential of his reincarnation. Standing tall in the fading light of his own mana, Lucius ignores the exhausted bickering of his teammates. The examiner gives them the official word. They pass. He lectures them about the importance of the teamwork they just displayed, even if it was unintentional. He tells them to hold on to that feeling before disappearing into a shroud of dark purple energy. The heavy aura finally lifts, and the three of them are left standing alone on the training field. Lucius looks at his hands, trying to recall the exact flow of energy from that merged strike. He knows that if he can control that power, it will be the key to defeating his ultimate rival. Later on, he heads to the Royal Academy Library to do some digging into the theory behind it. He spends hours searching through the massive shelves, finally pulling a specific book. The title is Basic Theory of Spiritual Energy, exactly what he was looking for. He reads that spiritual energy is a refined force that flows through internal circuits. Most people have either a magic power circuit like mages or a fighting spirit circuit like swordsmen. The text says it's common knowledge that you're born with only one of the two. Lucius realizes he cheated the system by using his mana to activate Hector's fighting spirit during their joint attack. He wonders if it's even possible to pull off a move like that without a partner. He keeps flipping through the pages, his expression turning serious. Then he finds a passage about rare ancestors who actually possessed both circuits and fused them into one. He slams the book onto the table, his eyes wide. This is it. He goes out to a quiet spot to test it, swinging a training sword with everything he's got. He tries to force the magic and spirit to merge, surrounding himself in a brilliant blue light. It doesn't work. The energy fizzles out, leaving him staring at his blade in frustration. But he felt it, a small spark of the fighting spirit from his previous life. He realizes his original circuit isn't gone. It's just sleeping deep inside him. He visualizes the red and blue energies swirling into a single, perfect storm of power. If he can just wake that circuit up, he'll reclaim the strength of a sword saint. The next morning, a crowd of students gathers as someone drops out of the sky and lands with a thud. A massive megaphone appears, aimed right at the group. It's teacher Cassie, and she's already at a level 10 energy. She greets everyone with a loud Yahoo. The students are practically blown back by the volume. Everyone is thinking the same thing. She's way too loud. Chibai Cassie explains that today's exercise is for everyone ranked between 30th and 100th in the academy. Teacher Cassie drops the news. It's officially time for the upper-class competition. The announcement sends a wave of shock through the crowd of students. Upperclassmen immediately start eyeing Lucius and his crew, whispering about the bunch of rookies that just walked into their territory. Cassie jumps into the air with her megaphone, cheering everyone on to do their best and climb the rankings. She's definitely got way too much energy for this. Lucius isn't listening to the cheers. He's too busy sizing up the competition. He notices right away that almost everyone here outranks them. A group of older students smirks from the sidelines. They clearly don't think much of the new kids. Lilia isn't the type to take being looked down on quietly. She snaps back, telling them to stop glaring before she loses her cool. Lilia, Hector, and Noah Raven stand their ground as the tension in the forest starts to thicken. Hector looks ready for a fight, while Lilia just keeps growling at anyone who gets too close. Suddenly, a massive guy bumps right into Lilia, nearly knocking her over. She's definitely not happy about the intrusion. Lilia starts laying into him, but the giant just gives a clumsy apology, claiming he couldn't even see her because of his size. The rest of the team just stares at the guy in disbelief. He's huge, and he's not the only threat they'll have to worry about today. Cassie cuts through the noise to explain the rules. It's simple. Find the hidden item, win the game. She shows off a holographic image of the target, a spiritual energy orb hidden deep in the mangrove forest. Lucius's interest is piqued. He knows that orb isn't just a trophy. It's a massive concentrate of pure spiritual power. Cassie hypes it up, explaining that absorbing one can give a student a permanent boost to their base energy levels. She leans in with a grin, asking who wouldn't want an item that can skip years of boring training. The other students are already salivating at the thought of getting that kind of power boost so easily. A dark smirk spreads across Lucius's face. He's already figured out exactly how he's going to use that orb. Lucius finally finds what he's been looking for. This is the breakthrough he needed. He realizes if he can pump a huge burst of high-purity energy into himself all at once, he can jumpstart the fighting spirit circuit from his past life. The catch, fighting other teams is totally allowed, and they only have until sunset to pull this off. The air gets heavy as the competition turns into a free-for-all. Teams are already sizing each other up for an ambush. Lucius, Lilia, and Hector lock in. They're ready to prove they aren't just easy targets for the upperclassmen. Cassie fires off a firework, and with a loud shout, the competition officially begins. Students scatter in every direction. Lucius leads the charge into the forest, with his team right on his heels. They need to get to that center tree fast. He moves with a speed that catches even his teammates off guard, his eyes focused entirely on the path ahead. But they aren't alone. A student with a malicious grin watches them from the shadows. The ambush hits fast. A group of upperclassmen drops from the canopy, mocking the rookies for thinking they had a chance. Hector realizes they're in trouble. These guys are much higher ranked and aren't holding back. One of the hunters lunges at Lucius with a spear, yelling for them to just drop dead already. The guy slams his weapon into the ground, but Lucius is already gone. He's way too fast for these punks. Lucius parries the spear with his bare hands, a burst of blue energy erupting from the contact point. In an instant, the attacker is sent flying back by the force of Lucius's mana. It's not even a contest. The upperclassman hits the dirt hard. Hector and the others can barely believe Lucius just handled him that easily. Lucius looks back at his stunned team, telling them not to let the official rankings fool them. They're stronger than they think. He reminds them of their training. Ranking doesn't matter when you have real power. Lilia and Hector find their resolve, realizing that together, they really can take on these hunters. But a new voice cuts through the air, mocking their little pep talk and asking who exactly thinks they're strong. The rookie hunter leader steps out of the trees, a smug look on his face. He's here to show them how a real predator hunts. Hector's face pales. He knows this isn't just another goon, this is the real thing. The leader smirks, confirming that the real rookie hunt has only just begun. Behind him, more students close in. He starts charging up a massive amount of green lightning energy, laughing about how he's going to steal their rankings for himself. A massive explosion of electrical power lights up the forest as the hunter prepares to wipe them all out in one strike. One of the opponents barely has time to react as a flash of light cuts across the screen. Hector leads the charge, his blade moving so fast it leaves a trail of electricity behind it. The guy can only watch in terror as his defense is completely bypassed. Hector doesn't even break his stride, his red eyes already scanning for the next threat. A couple of overconfident upperclassmen shout for them to stop being so cocky. They lunge from above, swinging their heavy blades with everything they've got. Lilia Magnaro just lets out a quiet huff, the heat around her starting to shimmer. Flames suddenly erupt around her body as she prepares to meet the challenge head-on. She doesn't even draw a weapon, trusting her fire-coated fists to do the job. A massive explosion of heat sends the attackers flying back into the trees. Her fist slams directly into a heavy broadsword, the metal glowing white-hot from the impact. Lilia tells them not to underestimate her as she powers through their guard. The guys can't believe a freshman has this kind of raw physical power. She clenches her fist, the flames intensifying as she prepares to end it. She lets out a massive blast of fire, clearing the entire path in one go. Lilia looks back over her shoulder, checking to see if anyone else wants to try their luck. High above, another student rains down ice shards, trying to pin down the hooded boy. Noah Raven looks up from beneath his cloak, completely unfazed by the incoming magic. Hector and Lilia keep the pressure on, while Noah holds the center of their formation. Noah realizes Lucius included him when he talked about how strong their team was. He unleashes his own ice magic, shattering the enemy's spells midair. The realization that he's being treated as an equal makes Noah's magic even more volatile. A massive shockwave of ice crystals fills the clearing, freezing everything in its path. The opponents are buried under a mountain of frost as the team regroups. Lilia and Hector look on, clearly impressed by the massive display of power. Lucius Elminster looks down at the pile of defeated students, his expression cold and analytical. His teammates gather behind him, looking equally unimpressed with the competition. He gives the order to move out, leaving the forest floor littered with unconscious upperclassmen. Back at the command center, Instructor Cassie watches the carnage through her floating mana bubbles. She notes that the top 5 teams were wiped out in just minutes by a bunch of new students. She acknowledges that Lilia, Hector, and Noah are impressive, but they aren't the ones she's interested in. Her gaze shifts to the bubble showing Lucius, who hasn't even broken a sweat yet. He's leading them with surgical precision and raising morale with just a single sentence. Cassie leans in close to the screen, completely obsessed with finding out who this kid really is. Lucius stays at the front, his eyes fixed on the objective as they push deeper into the forest. In the shadows, someone is watching them through a pair of binoculars. The swamp dwellers are lurking nearby, waiting for the fresh meat to walk into their trap. They wait by a massive glowing tree, silhouetted against the blinding light of a mana orb. The forest floor rumbles as Lucius's team sprints toward the center of the mangrove. Lilia shouts that they've finally made it, but Lucius warns them to keep their guard up. They reach a clearing and find a giant tree pulsing with intense magical energy. Right in the center of the hollowed trunk, something massive is beginning to stir. Lucius and his team sprint through the final stretch of the forest, the goal finally in sight. He's completely focused, his sharp eyes missing nothing as they close in on the clearing. Just as they're about to reach the light, Lucius suddenly throws out his arms and brings everyone to a halt. Lilia is fuming, shouting that if they stop now, the other teams are going to steal their prize. She's ready to keep charging, her eyes blazing with frustration, but the ground begins to rumble, and a massive shadow looms over the clearing. Hector and the others freeze as the air itself starts to vibrate with power. Noah Raven doesn't wait around, immediately preparing his magic for whatever is coming. A blinding light erupts from the hollowed tree, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. A giant fish beast lunges out of the glow, its massive jaws wide enough to swallow a whole group of students. The other teams nearby completely lose their nerve and start scrambling for their lives. Only Lucius's team stands their ground, facing the monster as it towers over them. Back at the command post, the other instructors are losing it, staring at the monitors in disbelief. They shout that the exam needs to be canceled, and reinforcements called in immediately. Instructor Cassie just hums to herself, looking more bored than concerned. She dismissively tells them to relax and just let the exam keep going. The men think she's insane, but she points out that unexpected things happen in real combat all the time. Then her tone gets chillingly cold as she says that anyone who dies here, the instructors can only stare at her in horror, realizing how little she cares about student lives. Would have just ended up dying on the battlefield anyway. They're completely speechless, realizing they're working for someone truly dangerous. She suddenly laughs it off and tells them she was just kidding about the dying part. She gives them a sadistic grin and tells them to leave it to their queen bee if things get truly dangerous. The instructors breathe a sigh of relief, though they're still nervous about the situation. But as they walk away, Cassie's expression shifts back to something much more serious. She knows there shouldn't be any high-level beasts in this zone, and she can tell something is wrong. Back in the clearing, some of the braver students try to mount a desperate attack. One of them jumps high into the air, swinging his sword with everything he's got. But the blade just shatters against the monster's hide like it was made of glass. He realizes with horror that the beast's scales are being reinforced by a spiritual energy orb. Other students try to use their magic, but their spells barely even tickle the creature. It lashes out, sending them flying with just a flick of its massive body. A huge shockwave of water and mana slams into the ground, clearing the area. The remaining students are left dazed and confused in the rising mist. The beast circles around, its glowing red eyes fixed on the intruders. The students can't believe it. Their strongest attacks didn't leave a single scratch on the beast. They start panicking, wondering what they can possibly do against something this powerful. The monster prepares for another lunge, its fins slicing through the air like blades. It charges with its mouth wide open, and the students scream for everyone to run. Instead of retreating, Lucius takes a deep breath and sprints directly at the monster's open maw. The onlookers are convinced he's lost his mind, shouting in disbelief at the suicide mission. He's dwarfed by the massive beast, looking like nothing more than a snack as the jaws begin to close. Lilia screams in terror as Lucius charges headfirst into the monster's maw. He looks like a tiny moth, flying into a flame against the massive, closing jaws of the fish beast. But inside the swirling mana, Lucius remains perfectly calm, his eyes glowing with an ancient power. The monster lunged forward, and in a blink the boy was nowhere to be seen. Then it dived back into the water as if nothing had ever happened. The student with glasses is horrified, convinced that Lucius has just committed a suicidal act of arrogance. Suddenly, a massive shockwave rippled through the giant monster's entire body. Another student points toward the sky, shouting for everyone to look at the spectacular display of power. The giant fish suddenly shot straight up into the sky, creating a massive pillar of water. Noah watches the ascent with a grim expression, nodding that the impact of that massive body could trigger a tsunami. But strangely, a blinding purple light suddenly erupted on the monster's head, crackling with intense energy. The explosion of mana is so intense that the other students are forced to shield their eyes from the glare. Hector and Lilia can only watch in stunned silence as the nightmare they just faced finally ends. The clearing is suddenly dead quiet as the dust and glowing particles begin to settle on the grass. Where a giant monster once stood, there is now only a fatting sphere of brilliant, concentrated light. The crowd was left in total disbelief as a shadowy figure emerged. It was the protagonist, Lucius. They couldn't wrap their heads around how a mere boy could have destroyed such a thing all by himself. Lucius emerges from the light with a cold smirk, clutching a pulsing green sphere, the spiritual energy orb. He simply announces that he secured the prize, acting as if he hadn't just done something impossible. He walks back toward his team, his expression cool and detached despite the chaos he just caused. Lilia and Hector just stare at him, unable to find any words to describe the feat they just witnessed. The orb in his hand hums with a power that feels almost alive, casting a green glow over his features. Suddenly, Instructor Cassie's voice booms over the area, officially announcing the end of the special exercise. She descends from the sky like a dark shadow, looking down at the surviving students with a grin. She pulls out a megaphone and cheerfully tells everyone to head back to the main school building. Her golden eyes are fixed on Lucius, filled with a new and dangerous level of curiosity. Lucius ignores the attention, his focus entirely on the massive amount of energy contained in the orb. The rival team they beat is left fuming, unable to believe they lost the win to a group of first-years. Lucius's team begins the walk back, leaving the scene of their victory and the shattered beast behind. Lilia quickly recovers her usual confidence, bragging about how the whole fight was a complete breeze. Even the quiet Noah can't help but let out a soft chuckle at her predictable and loud reaction. But Lilia's bravado quickly fades as she looks over at the blonde boy walking ahead of them. She stops and calls out to him, her voice much softer and more uncertain than it was a moment ago. She wondered who on earth he really was, having finally realized he was no ordinary student. Striding ahead, Lucius's golden eyes remained as cold and unreadable as ever. In his mind, he's only thinking about the spiritual energy orb and the power it represents. He can feel the incredibly dense amount of spiritual energy coming from it, far beyond what he expected. He knows that with this resource, he might finally be able to awaken his fighting spirit circuit in this life. Their conversation is interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps on the forest floor. The leader of the Swamp Dwellers team steps forward, looking genuinely impressed by their strength. He admits they were so terrified they couldn't even move, and Lilia realizes it's the old guy they bumped into. He tells them they were genuinely blown away by the fight, and it's hard to believe they're freshmen. He gives Lucius a respectful nod, acknowledging that his strength was beyond anything he'd ever seen. The leader of the older students praises the entire team's spiritual energy, surprising Lilia with how quickly their attitude toward Lucius has shifted. He humbly suggests that their long experience at the academy could be useful to the talented freshmen, despite their own supposed lack of strength. With a wide, friendly smile, he offers an olive branch, proposing that they all become good friends from this moment forward. Lilia remains silent for a beat, her expression suspicious as she weighs the sincerity of the older student's offer. Deciding to take the friendly gesture at face value, she lets out a cheerful laugh and accepts that they should get along. She reaches out to seal the deal with a handshake, her guard dropping as she smiles back at her new ally. But as their hands meet, the leader's face remains cast in shadow, his eyes devoid of the warmth he was projecting just a second ago. In a terrifying blur of motion, the atmosphere of friendship is shattered as the man launches a brutal and unexpected strike. Lilia's eyes bulge in pure, agonizing shock as she realizes the depths of the betrayal a split second too late. She is ruthlessly slammed into the ground, the impact sending up a cloud of debris as the older student shows his true power. Hector and Noah can only stare in horror, their bodies frozen by the sudden and senseless violence against their teammate. Lilia lies limp on the forest floor, blood trickling from her mouth, as she slips into unconsciousness from the single, devastating blow. Hector demands to know what they are plotting, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and growing rage. Lucius quickly moves to catch the falling Lilia, his gaze turning stone cold as he reminds the attackers that the exercise has already ended. The leader looks down at them, a twisted sense of wonder in his eyes as he finds their reactions to be truly magnificent. He repeats his praise with a chilling calmness, the mask of the friendly upperclassmen now completely gone. He reveals their sinister purpose, calling the freshmen the absolute best bait they could have ever hoped for. Hector draws his sword, his eyes burning with defiance even as the rest of the Swamp Dweller team closes in around them. The leader leans in, his smile widening into a predatory grin as he prepares to school the children on the reality of the academy. He asks if they truly understand the meaning of their name, a question that hangs heavy in the tense, dark air. Noah looks up from the shadows of his hood, the term Swamp Dweller suddenly sounding far more ominous than before. The man explains the academy's singular, cutthroat rule. Every year, the bottom 125 students are facing mandatory expulsion. He points out the loophole, explaining that as long as they stay out of that bottom bracket, they can remain at the school forever. His gaze is filled with a cruel, mocking pity as he speaks of those who are too weak to rise and gain a blessing. This guy explains that they're basically academy ghosts, stuck here for years, just getting older. They're too skilled to be kicked out, but not good enough to actually graduate. They call themselves the Swamp Dwellers, a group of leftovers lurking in the shadows. Lucius isn't impressed. He just wants to know what their actual plan is. The leader admits they hit a wall as mid-tier students and stayed there until they became old men. They've even been stripped of their family names. This place is all they have left. Hector's disgusted. To him, they're just losers clinging to a pathetic obsession. That touches a nerve. The leader shouts that they've lost everything and there's no other way to the top. He looks completely unhinged as he claws at his own face. He doesn't care about morals anymore. A massive, glowing hourglass artifact rises behind them. Hector stares at the thing. It's definitely not standard academy gear. The bottle is filled with human skulls floating in a weird pink liquid. Noah's eyes narrow from under his hood as the trap activates. Dark energy spirals around the hooded boy, locking him in place. The entire area is swallowed by a thick, oppressive miasma. The large Swamp Dweller can't hide his grin. They raise their arms like they're receiving a blessing as the artifact glows. Hector and Noah are paralyzed, struggling to even move. The outcasts start pulling the energy directly from the air. Vortexes of purple mana form in the palms of their hands. The bulky one savors it, practically swallowing the stolen power. The skulls inside the bottle begin to shine with an eerie light. They're loving the rush. To them, this stolen mana is the ultimate high. The large Swamp Dweller looks sick with greed, telling them he's going to suck them dry. Noah tries to fight off the dark tendrils, but they're too strong. The bulky student is losing it, thanking them for the fresh mana. Hector manages to break free for a second and readies her blade. The artifact pulses again, ready to absorb whatever he throws at it. He figures if she breaks the bottle, the spell will end. He lunges forward, putting everything into a single strike. The blade cuts through the air with a flash of light, but the sword just bounces off the artifact's energy shield. Hector freezes in shock. His best hit didn't even leave a scratch. The large Swamp Dweller moves faster than he looks and grabs him right by the throat. He mocks him, explaining that only the casters can even touch the artifact. While he's busy gloating, Lucius is already closing the distance. Lucius keeps his cool, observing the situation with a cold stare. The Swamp Dweller leader laughs. Any magical attack just makes the bottle stronger. Even physical contact is a death trap. It will drain her life force just as fast as Hector's mana. Lucius has seen enough. If magic won't work, he'll just go back to basics. He launches himself into the air with a sudden burst of speed. He delivers a brutal kick right into the large Swamp Dweller's face, sending him reeling. A massive shockwave ripples through the air as the kick connects with terrifying force. Lucius sticks the landing, barely breaking a sweat while Hector looks on in disbelief. He realizes that even if their fancy bottle absorbs magic, it's completely useless against raw physical power. The swamp dwellers are left hacking and coughing in the dirt, trying to recover from the impact. Hector can only stare as Lucius calmly steps over him and picks up a blade. He's battered and confused, his mind racing to make sense of his teammate's sudden change. He wonders what a magic caster thinks he can do with a sword in a fight like this. Lucius just tightens his grip on the hilt and tells him he's not quite what he thinks. He unsheathes the blade with a smooth, practiced motion that speaks of years of training. A dark, confident grin spreads across his face as he starts to reveal his secret. The outcasts look on in horror, sensing a sudden, overwhelming pressure coming from the boy. He drops into a perfect sword stance, admitting that his real specialty was never magic to begin with. With a predatory look and a glowing red eye, Lucius prepares to dismantle them using the skills of a master swordsman.